All right, welcome everybody. So Pesach's coming up. Hopefully everybody has a Seder that we're going to go to and enjoy. So Dennis Prager has his book, The Rational Haggadah, and I started it last year. I read the first half of it, and then I didn't have time to finish it before Passover. But it was really good. So then after Passover, I didn't finish it. So this year I said, you know what, I need to finish it. So I'm not very tech savvy, but I bought it on Audible so I could listen to it while driving, even though I have the physical copy. And so what I started doing was every time he brings up a good point, and there are a lot, I would pause it and then I would go to the notes section on my phone and I would just record a audio voice note about what he said so I wouldn't forget later. A digital bookmark sort of. So I still have not finished it. I've got like an hour left to go on the audible version of it. But I had so many voice notes that I'm like, this is gonna take forever to compile because I figure I could put this in like Microsoft Word, like the lessons from this book. So if I want to refer to it later, rather than going through the whole book to find this good point that I know he made somewhere in there, I can just have one document where I can search the good points within the book. So I started to compile that. So what I did is I used AI, and I'll show you what I did here. Let's go to share the whole screen. So Word, lessons from Dennis Prager. All right, you see this Word document here? Can anybody see it? Somebody let me know. Somebody speak up.
Hello, Rabbi.
Shalom, welcome. We just started recording. Glad to
Oh,
see
really?
you.
So I was actually able to do it. I copied the link and I went to Google and I pasted it in Google, and that's how it got me to Zoom. Because otherwise, I am not able to go from my Zoom app or anywhere else. I don't know why.
Huh.
I
Maybe there's like I don't know. You know how I don't know how anything works. I've got, I guess, a Zoom app on my phone, but when I'm logged in there is different to here because this is Asher's account.
did we used to do this from different app? Was it on different app before?
This is what I've always done it on because this is Asher's account. But I have like my own personal Zoom account. So when somebody else has a meeting and I click on their link, then I show up under my account, not Asher's.
So,
I don't know how it works.
so you were not doing this from WhatsApp, no?
Oh, I used to share this link in the WhatsApp
Oh,
group.
that's how I was getting to that link, and that's how it was letting me get in. And now I just am not able to.
Well,
I
you're
could,
in the Mishnah Torah Yomi group on Facebook, though. I put the link there.
oh, I didn't see it. So
Yeah, if you check that, that should be the same link. I'm glad you figured out a way to make it work. So you missed all the good, fun conversation before the recording. But are you able to see the document here?
can I see the document?
Yeah. Am I screen sharing so you
Yeah,
can
I can
see
see
this?
the document.
Do you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. You
Oh,
want me?
okay, good. I just want to make sure I was screen sharing. So what I was saying is that last year I got this Dennis Prager's Rational Haggadah for Pesach, and I only went through the first half of it. It was so good that this year I decided I need to finish it. So I got it on Audible so I could listen to it on audio. And I still haven't finished it. I got like an hour to go. But as I was listening to it, every time he makes a good point, I would pause it and then I would go to notes in my phone and I would record a voice note of the good point that he made. So now when I remember he said this and that somewhere in the book, instead of searching through the whole book, I can create a document here where I can just find the bullet points, right?
Mhm.
So I took the first voice note uh, that I found, and remember in the when I was talking about the midrashim about how there's one midrash that says God says that Moses sinned and brought people out that God told Moses not to bring out because he used the word your people. These are your people, and that's I debunked that whole midrash in the
Wait,
midrashim
not
class.
to people where?
So when God brought us out of Egypt with Moses leading the way, there's a sentence in there when they built the golden calf that God says, "Look at what your people have done. They
Mm-hmm.
built the golden calf."
Oh
So
yeah.
in that class on the Asher interviewed a guy named Moshe Perry who says the Torah says that Moses sinned because he brought the people out, the non-Hebrews out, that God didn't want him to bring out because he says, "Look at what your people have done. You weren't supposed to convert them. I only wanted the Hebrews." The only thing he quoted was from Torah was "your people," 2 words, and then he builds this whole story that's not in Torah off of the sentence "your people." So Dennis Prager here brings up a good point that when he says "your people," it's like a parent saying, "Look at what your son did." Well, it's the child of both of you. You know, it's not saying it's not your son because you're saying your son. It's just expressing frustration when we do that.
Do you
So that
think that those people who built the golden calf, maybe they were not Hebrews, maybe they were um other people,
so
like
that's
yes.
that's the midrash that gets built off of it. That the Hebrews didn't do it because no Hebrew would do that. So that must have been the mixed multitude because
Uh,
God said, "Look at what your people have done." But
yeah.
Aaron, Moses' brother, played a role in building the golden calf.
Right.
So was Aaron not supposed to come out? Plus, it says the Levites were instructed to kill the ones that did that. Your brother, your kin. That means Levites were involved in it if it was the Levites' brothers that were getting killed. So it's just turning the non Hebrews into a scapegoat. Well, a Hebrew would never do that, so it must have been the non Hebrews. But
Hmm.
Hebrews did a lot of things, complained about not getting meat. So they've just become scapegoats. But that whole thing is built off of the 2 words, "your people."
Hmm.
So Dennis Prager makes the point, "your people" just means, plus he also brings up the fact that right afterwards, Moses says, "Don't let the Egyptians say that you brought your people out here just to destroy them in the wilderness." So Moses even says, "These are your people. You brought us out." So that was like the first good point that I found in the book. So I made a little voice note. So I go to AI and I said, "I've got like 40 good points that I want to articulate, and I'd like you to rephrase them for me. Can you do that? Can you handle something that big?" And it said, "Yes, put it in." So I put the first one in, one we just discussed. And here's a refined and expanded version of your note with clearer phrasing and deeper insight. It says in Exodus 32:7, God tells Moses, "Your people," this is what the whole thing is built off of, these 2 words,
Yeah.
"whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves." This phrasing mirrors a frustrated parent saying to the other, "Look at what your son has done." Though the Israelites are undeniably God's people, his choice of words, "your people," subtly distances himself in that moment, emphasizing his displeasure with their disobedience, the golden calf incident. This reflects a relational dynamic, even in anger. God acknowledges his covenant with them, but stresses accountability like a parent correcting a child. He holds them responsible while leaving room for Moses to intercede, which he does in Exodus 32. Key takeaway: God's temporary shift in language, "your people," does not negate his ownership of Israel, but highlights the gravity of their sin and the role of mediation. I'm like, this is great. This is what I love about AI. It articulates things so much better. So, and then look, it even says, "Would you like me to adjust the tone? More scholarly, pastoral, simplified," or if you have other notes I can quote. So I'm like, okay, that's great. That was the first note. Now let me list the rest. So now I spent hours, articulating the rest of these, and then voice to text doesn't work because half of the words are in Hebrew and it comes out
Yeah.
gibberish, and you have to go fix it. So these are the voice notes you see in the blue.
Hmm.
This is what I typed up. This is all the good things that I got from the book. And I'm not even done with the book. I got an hour left to listen. So this is what I put in there. And keep in mind, this is not talking about the Seder itself. I ignored all of that. These
So
are just moral good lessons that we can learn from Judaism that are also in this book about Passover. So I put all of this in one at a time. Look, you see, everything's spelled wrong, whatever. But I got number
how,
29.
talk and it types for you? Where do you
No,
do the?
I typed it, but it's got like a microphone on the laptop where you can speak and it'll record.
Oh.
But then when you start talking about the mitzvah and the halachot and the nagim, it starts typing gibberish because it doesn't know you're going from English to Hebrew. So I did the talk to text, and then I had to go manually fix all of that. But you see, I just put this is the 37th good point that I found. This is the 33rd good point. So all this in blue. These are the good points that you see, I don't know how to spell. Because after I type this is going to organize it for me, which it did. But the way it organized it at first, it took and put the ritual, the second one and the third one. I guess this is what the ritualistic.
Mm-hmm.
Then questioning and verification. These it separates by topic:
Mm-hmm.
ethical monotheism, objective morality. 22nd note was this. 24 through 26 was that. So when you read these, it's so short. Some of these that it's like these short things don't really do it justice. So then I asked it, like, look at how short this is. The Ten Commandments emphasize moral behavior as a foundational to covenant with God. True. Can we expand on that a little bit? So it's a little too bullet point for me. So I asked it to redo them in chronological order, and this is when it did. So it took my points one at a time and gives me a little thing. But as I scroll through here, look at this. Wisdom requires distinguishing between feelings and reason, truth. It's much longer than that. So as good of a job as it did, honestly, I think it's better to just go through them one at a time, like I did right here. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't look so organized because there's no space between them, but I think you'll get more out of it out of reading this than reading what the AI did. So let's just go through them. Okay, so this was the first note that it did. Then I put 2 through 38 or however many they are in. Okay, so this is my voice note as I'm driving. All right, so a good point was that most observed holidays in America, Christmas and Thanksgiving, are rituals. Um, there are rituals that are associated with it. At least the observed things and the see how this wasn't going to be the plan. I wanted it to make it sound better. Okay, the most observed rituals in America are Christmas and Thanksgiving, and they have rituals associated with them. President's Day has almost no rituals whatsoever, so it's basically just a vacation day. Um, so Passover has a ritual associated with it, which is the Seder, and I think this is because of the meaning. It's not just if we don't have the ritual of the Seder, then Passover will just become a vacation day like President's Day. So does that make sense? Because there's rituals with Thanksgiving, getting together with family, feasting, Christmas, which we don't celebrate, as a Christmas tree. So
But
these rituals are what attributes meaning to the holiday. President's Day, there's no ritual associated with it, so most people just take the day off.
right.
Why
Did,
they get it off.
did God
So have you? Go ahead.
did God require for us to have all those rituals in details, or is
Uh, no, there are rituals associated with Passover, like the Korban Pesach, but we
Mhm,
can't do it because we don't have the temple.
mhm,
So the rabbis said we need to have a ritual, which is the Seder. Seder comes from like Siddur, it means order. So
mhm,
your Seder plates, because everything is in a certain order on that plate. So that's the ritual that the rabbis instituted so that we won't forget. Because after the destruction of the temple, we don't even have a temple where we used to do the korban, the Passover sacrifice. So otherwise, if we didn't have this Seder and these rituals, it would be like President's Day.
mhm.
Oh, don't we get a day off for like Passover or something? So the Seder that we look forward to is why we remember we left Egypt, freedom. So rituals are attributing meaning, and that's why we don't forget. So if you look at the rituals that they instituted, the Seder plate doesn't have the most exquisite cuisine on it. So we have things like a hard-boiled egg, celery. So this is because the rabbis chose the meaning over the cuisine. Everything is associated with bitter herbs and the tears, So there's an association with every part of it. And almost every Jew, this is our favorite holiday, is Pesach, because we
What
enjoy it.
what is Hazaret associated with? Haraset, I'm sorry. Did I say it right? Haraset.
Haroset and Maror.
It's the mortar. It represents the mortar that they used.
Very good.
Correct. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're right, because I was trying to think of what it means. I don't have them all memorized. So
Yeah, it's the mortar because that's my favorite. That's how come I know.
mine is I don't remember, the horseradish with the red stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like kind of spicy.
Oh, you
You
mean
would think that that would be the mortar.
the beets and horseradish?
Yes,
I like that. That's
me
kind of
too.
Ukrainian food. We did this in Ukraine for I think we did this for Christmas or some. No. We did this for the Easter. Yep, we ate this with eggs for Easter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a different reasoning with Christianity for the eggs.
Yeah, right.
Because pagans used to paint blood with them. I'm just giving Christians a hard time. All right, so we understand the purpose of that, the meaning to the ritual.
Mhm.
And that's the same thing on the next point. Everybody can tell you that for Hanukkah, we light candles. Everybody knows that. But not everybody can tell you why we do. This leads me to believe that if it were not for lighting candles, we wouldn't remember the Maccabean revolt, because there's been so many fights in our history. Why would this one stand out above many of the other ones? It's because it's been ritualized. So I think we have to attribute the meaning to it. Otherwise, it's just like President's Day that doesn't mean much to us. So we've been in a lot of battles, but we don't have a ceremony to remember each one of them. And so I think he makes a good point. If we didn't have Hanukkah, would people even know about the Maccabean revolt, which was one of many? So I thought that was a good point. Okay. Respect it and suspect it. I thought that was a really good line that we should probably remember. We can respect what we are taught, but also look it up to verify. Rabbis sometimes get things wrong, myself included. That's my note there. So when you see a rabbi tell you something, you can respect his answer, but you can also suspect it. You've heard trust but verify. Look it up. Say, hey, that's interesting. Where'd you get that from? Because I want to go read more about that. I want to see if that was the only opinion, or was there, more to that story, and you're giving me the abridged version, and that's good to do. Rabbis don't usually like to be challenged, but if you phrase it respectfully, when you start doing that, you'll find oftentimes the answer. I don't know. I know it's somewhere in the Talmud. I don't remember where. Sometimes you'll find answers I recently heard there was debate about the Adam and Eve story in Genesis, that they decided that the story was going to make it in. I was like, where did you get that from? Because I heard there's a Tosefta that says some of it was rearranged. Like, did God stand before Abraham was changed to Abraham stood before God? So I never heard about the story about Adam and Eve being, discussed. And the rabbi was like, it was in a documentary. Oh, so we're not discussing rabbinic literature, we're discussing documentaries. Okay. So this is why you ask, you know what I mean? Because sometimes you want to know the source that they're quoting, that they themselves might not know. Okay, asking questions is good. Abraham also asked God questions. Shall not the judge of all the earth ask justly? If we can question God, which is what we learn from that story in Torah, how much more so can we question rabbis? Respectfully, not to challenge them and say they don't know what you're talking about, but as a student, that's what you're there to do, is learn.
Right.
In Egypt, God allowed first generation Jews to be enslaved, and the final generation that were in Egypt of Jews to be killed. The firstborns were drowned in the river in Egypt. So obviously, God does allow bad things to happen. So I guess we need to have an explanation for why that is, because secular people have a problem with this. Well, if God allows bad things to happen, why should I be a part of it? So this is where I go back to, it doesn't, nowhere does it say that God is not going to allow bad things to happen. But um, it says, if you follow my commandments, you'll see rain in the proper season. You'll live long enough to see your children grow old. Good things that you'll see in this life. So the question comes up, well, I know this guy was froom. He lived a good life, but he died early. Does that mean the system don't work? Well, it's not talking about on the individual level. It's talking about on the macro. If you follow my commandments, things will be good for you as a society. There's going to be exceptions. There's exceptions to every rule. Um, so that's kind of the argument I try and make when that question comes up. Okay, secular things don't last. For it to have meaning, it has to have a religious context to it. It has to be attributed to the thing. If you're just doing it because it's my culture, we like to wear this or we like to take this day off. If it's not going to have meaning, it's not going to last. It needs to have a religious attachment to be internalized that way. I guess we can attribute that to if if it was secular, for example, if secular people that don't believe in God were just taking a day off for Passover, if it was like President's Day, how long would it last? How long would secular people that don't believe in God keep a Seder? They probably wouldn't. But religious people would never dream about, I'm not doing anything for Passover this year.
So
That's just
how long do you think President Day will last for the secular people? Are they gonna keep it forever? President
only because.
like Saturday.
So if you don't work at a job where you get that day off, they do go to work like everybody else. They don't even know that it is President's Day. So this is why we have to attribute meanings to things. I don't attribute a lot of meaning to President's Day. That's why it's the example. So yeah, if secular people would not continue to do this, and we wouldn't continue to be a people. So we have to have attribute meaning to internalize it, and that's the purpose of the Seder. And so we don't forget the meanings for each item. Okay, God's primary demand is that humans behave ethically. We see this with the Ten Commandments. What we should, and there's a lot you could say about that, especially with people that are pushing like the seven law thing. I mean, the Ten Commandments is the absolute minimum standard, I think. So what we should be proud of is that we have shaped the world through Torah. We should be proud of shaping the world with Shabbat. So clearly, keeping Shabbat is the most important part. Here in America, Christians don't open their stores on Sunday. If they do open them, they open them later so people get to sleep in. In some places, you can't buy alcohol on Sundays. So even members of different religions have something different about Shabbat that they got from us. Even if they don't keep it the way we do, they moved it to a different day, etc. They basically did get that concept from us. God introduced the concept of Shabbat for us, and we're the ones that spread that to the rest of the world, even if they didn't copy it perfectly, like they probably should have. Okay, you've heard Asher say this all the time. We don't believe in Torah because of God. For most of us, God didn't say, I need you to go get this book, read what it says. We believe in God because of the Torah. God didn't tell us to read the Torah. We read the Torah because that's how you get to know God. Um, the Torah is what tells us who God is and what he expects of us. And then you can see that God is good. You can argue with him, you can negotiate with him. You see that he's merciful, he's patient. So now we see where Asher gets it from. He gets it from Dennis Prager. Okay, so you have to be able to separate emotions from intellect, or at least be able to tell the difference. And I've been noticing this a lot. A lot of times when people have problems, like we were discussing before the recording, of somebody having a problem with rules, there's really no problem with the rules in Torah. The problem is that he had an emotional trauma that this triggers. Oh, this makes me think of my experience in Christianity before I came to Judaism, and I don't like what this other sect of Judaism is doing. And so I'm emotionally disturbed by the concept of rules. Okay, that's an individual problem, and I'd like to see you get help with that. But we cannot start getting rid of rules. This is what Judaism is, what Judaism has been. No layman can read the Torah and say, well, God considers rules to be optional. He's not really concerned if you do this or that. At that point, you're no different than secular people that are just saying, I'm going to pick and choose. I'm going to do what I want to do. And there are some good people that do that. But on the whole, society cannot function that way. You're dealing with anarchy at that point. You can't reinvent the wheel because you're not going to do as good of a job as the Torah did. Okay, so we welcome people in because God is a good God who judges the world fairly. So the Torah invites everyone to be a part of it, at a minimum, 10 commandments. Judaism has to fulfill the mind as well as the heart and give one's life meaning. He quotes somebody here, and I don't remember the name of the person, because again, I'm just like doing voice notes as I'm driving. But it was some psychologist, I guess, some famous person that worked in that field says that the need to have meaning in one's life is stronger than the urge to fulfill sexual desire, which is a pretty bold claim. I mean, kingdoms have fallen over, sexual desires. But this is why people can live a celibate life as long as they have meaning. There's like monks, I guess, that never marry because they devote their life to their religion. But people who have a sexually gratifying life, rock stars, people that engage in a life of debauchery, they can commit suicide with all the money and all the means to get whatever they want because their life does not have meaning. I thought that was a pretty profound statement. Okay, now supposedly the Torah mentions over 50 times how we are supposed to be treating the aliens well. I didn't count them. That's Dennis Prager's claim. It seems like a high number because the number of times converts is mentioned is usually 36. Some say 46. So to say more than 50, that tells me it's probably combining the stranger, the ger, convert, the orphan, the widow, to get a number more than 50 times. So I didn't investigate it, but that's the claim he makes. That over 50 times it references how we're supposed to be treating other people well. In the last century, over 100 million people were killed by atheists. I don't think I articulated this right, more than all wars in all human history preceding. When the whole world was religious, so all religious wars combined do not equal the deaths caused by atheists in the last 100 years. So people say that religion caused a lot of wars. I mean, there was territorial wars. The point that we were making here was that 150 years ago, if you go from there back, everybody was religious. Religion and science was, and history was all the same thing. This God created this, and we get rain for this and that, and the wind happens because of this deity. This is what all religious people believe, not Jews, but different religions around the world. So all wars fought in the name of religion didn't equal up to probably 100 million people. It was killed by Mao, Stalin, Hitler. Those were not religious pursuits. So in the last century, 100 million people were killed in World War I and II and these other conflicts around the world. So in 100 years, wars started by non-religious people killed more than all religious wars in human history. So that's what happens when you try to deviate from God's standard. Atheism was able to overtake all of human history. So that's why we can't reinvent the wheel and do away with wars. So look at all the good things that happened in the world. the civil rights movement, the abolishment of slavery, the establishment of the most free country in the world was America, all done by religious people, mostly Christianity. So in very recent history, all these good things were done by religious people, and over 100 million people killed by non-religious people. So which group, religious people over here that did these good things, non-religious people over here that killed 100 million people? Which group should you say should be left to decide what's good and what's bad? I would say religious people is you have a better odds there. Okay, believing in God does not ensure that people will do good. There are religious people that do bad things. It just ensures that good and evil objectively exists. Believing in Zeus doesn't give us a standard to judge people against. Believing in the God of Israel does give us a standard that we could say people did not do good because they fell short of that standard. Or we could say people did do good because they met that standard. This is the reason why we don't love Torah because God told us to. We love God because we read the Torah and we see God is there in order to get to know. And what we know from the Torah is the standard that God gave. And the good that we see around the world done by people who have attempted to live up to that standard. Some people fall short of that standard, myself included. But my definition of a good Jew is not one who's perfect. We know such a such a Jew doesn't exist. It's one who's getting better. So as long as you're doing better this year than you did last year, you plan to do better next year than you're doing this year, you're on the right trajectory. You're on a good course because you are attempting to improve and get as close as possible to that standard. People that say, we don't talk about standards, then you never have to say you fell short of anything. You can just say, well, I think there was pagans that were mixing meat and milk, and that's why it's in the Torah. So therefore, I don't have to follow that Torah commandment because I think that's what the Torah is talking about. Well, then we can just do away with, I think, this sexual perversion that other groups were doing in the Canaanite nations. That's what it's referring to. I'm not doing that. So now I can do other sexual perversions. When you let people start saying, I'm going to choose what part of the standard we can get rid of, that's bad. If you just acknowledge this is the standard and I fell short, then you're not obliterating that standard. I don't feel like I articulated that very well, but if that makes sense, let me know. I'd rather say, even if I fell short, that I screwed up. I'm going to try harder next time. I'm not going to say that standard doesn't exist. I shouldn't have to meet that standard. There's a difference between trying and failing. There's a difference between doing that and then just not trying at all. Saying I shouldn't have to attempt to meet that standard because that standard should not be there. I'd rather try and fail, and this is how we improve ourselves. So that's what I was trying to articulate there. Okay, without that standard, saying that murder is evil would be no different than saying I personally happen to not like murder. What happens when the majority of people happen to like murder? Murder becomes normal because by definition, normal is what most people are doing. And this might seem like an extreme example. Did I list that here? Now, let me get through this. So even if you happen to like murder, I think you need to understand that it is evil. Murder, yeah, I did. Okay, murder might be an extreme example, but most men can relate to liking things that perhaps are supposed to be off limits to us. And that is the fight to improve yourself. It's individual moral training based on this ethical monotheism. So if you accept the standard, God says murder is wrong. If you like to murder people, then at least if we acknowledge that standard is there, then you can say, I like to murder people. Jeffrey Dahmer liked to murder people and engage in cannibalism and other disgusting things. If that's what you want to do, then you can at least acknowledge that is evil. And I'm attracted to something that's evil. And I should work on not doing this. When these evil thoughts enter my mind, I can train myself to get rid of them because I know I'm engaging in evil attraction. If you don't acknowledge that standard, then you're like, well, these people don't like murder, but I do. Who are they to tell me what I like is wrong? This is why I put the example for guys being attracted to things. Lots of guys are attracted to things that are wrong, kind of normal, but we can't feed it and nourish it and normalize it. We have to acknowledge we need to work on that. That's what free will is. It's not the ability to do whatever I want. It's the ability to say, I could do what's right, or I could give in and do what's wrong. That's free will. The ability to choose to work on yourself and not do what's wrong. But if you don't acknowledge the standard, then why would you even feel the need to work on yourself? You would just say society's wrong. They're calling it evil, but I want to do it. So there's really nothing wrong. And who are they to tell me that what I like is evil? It'll go more into detail here. Without that objective standard, a college student would just view a claim about what is moral to be an opinion that is either is or is not true, or only relative to a culture. For example, I have heard of military people who say that if in Afghanistan, it is their culture to rape young boys. That is what is normal to them. And the majority does not see that as evil. They see it as an opinion that there is nothing wrong with it. This is why we need an objective standard, not just an opinion or a culture to decide what is good and evil. And I think that standard is the standard that we were given in Torah. And I think that's what civilized the world. This is why I don't think we should attempt to reinvent the wheel and say, well, I know what the real meaning behind this mitzvah was, so that doesn't apply to me. I think this is why we need to submit to that standard, even if we fall short. Okay, Judaism goes beyond making the claim that if you follow the system, you will believe what's popular is to believe what is moral. It lays out a standard that there is a God and that God commanded us to follow the standard. And that starts with the Ten Commandments. And that goes beyond there by telling us that we have to love our neighbors as ourselves. We're not to muzzle an ox while it's working in the field. Okay, I think when I said this, Judaism goes beyond making the claim that if you follow the system, you will believe what's popular is to believe what's moral. There's things now that, like we were discussing, LGBTQ stuff. People did not say the type of things when I was growing up that they're saying today, but it's become popular. So now you have people saying that it's somehow moral to engage in a lot of what they're pushing because it's become popular. And this is where I think this standard has to be what we go by rather than just what's popular and seeing what other people are doing. Okay, humans cannot exist in the world living a life that has no meaning. This is why you see some people trying to fill their need for meaning with destructive things. Burning down Teslas, for example, fighting for climate change and destroying paintings. And, that's what's giving their life meaning. But they're channeling it in a destructive way. Judaism, on the other hand, can be channeled into the ethical or ritualistic trade. It's kind of why it can fulfill both the emotional and the intellectual needs. We're all calibrated differently, so we respond differently to both sides. This is really mysticism versus rationalism. And Judaism has both for a reason. Some people are into the emotional, some people are into the spiritual, some people are into the intellectual. So we just need to be able to separate and understand what we're dealing with. But there's something there for everybody. Without God, humans are just throwaway survival machines. But with God, we are created in the image of God. This reminds me of a shiur about the Shema. When we say the Shema, when we say God is Echad, one, we don't just mean singular, and we don't just mean that God is unique. Because if there was two, then one would be like the other. But if there's one, then there's not another one to compare it to. Um, but we mean God is one with the universe. So if we stub our toe, we can't just get mad at the rock and throw the rock away and destroy the rock, because the rock is part of God's creation. So we can't just destroy the rock because that's part of God's creation, who God is one with. So if we can't destroy the rock, how much more are we not able to destroy a human being, which is part of God's creation? But I really like that line that he said, without God, humans are just throwaway survival machines. They want to survive just like that. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Somebody designed as a work of art a hydraulic machine. It's like a vacuum, but they put a leak in it. So all the hydraulic fluid is leaking out, and it's got to vacuum it up so it can stay alive. And it went on for years. And then they watched it later on, and it looks like a tired, defeated machine. It's really kind of a sad but beautiful thing to watch. The machine has to work and vacuum up its own blood, sort of, so it doesn't bleed to death. So it's constantly working and vacuuming up. So without God, this is what we'd be: machines just trying to survive. Okay, the Torah and even later Judaism is silent on what happens when we die. This is the reason why priests are not allowed to come into contact with the dead, because the priest has to focus on this life and not the next. This is the exact opposite of what Egyptians focused on. They were all about the next life. They were building tombs for the dead, being buried with things that they were going to need in the next life. We're focused on doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because we were promised a reward in the next world, not because we were threatened with punishments in the next world. We believe these things in faith, but the Torah didn't tell us these things. We're supposed to give an affirmation in this life, which is to do. And then we can assign what happens in the next world to faith. And the sum total that we get cannot just be unjust suffering in this world. So we have to believe that the Nazis and good people do not meet the same fate. And that ultimately is a statement of faith. Because we believe God is a good God, we do not believe that Hitler and his victims will get the same reward or punishment. And because we know God is a good God, we believe that's not going to be the case. If you believe this world is all that there is, and there's suffering, and there is suffering, for example, there's lots of bad things going on in the world. I mean, there's young children that get diseases that not just ends their life at a young age, painful and suffering. So if you believe that's the children came into this world, that's all they got to experience, and then they were gone from this world, and there's nothing else because you believe that this world is all there is, then that could lead to people either thinking that there is no God, or they could come to hate God. That would be bad. Because this would lead you to feel like, I better get all I can out of this world, because why not? If there's nothing else, why wouldn't I try to get everything that I can? This is what the drug cartels seem to think. Or it could lead to utopianism, trying to make heaven on earth. If this world is all there is, then we can try to eliminate anything that we feel is bad, including anybody that disagrees with their standard. If there is no God whatsoever, then I can try and get rid of anything that I don't like. Meaning, these people don't add value to my life. They say things that I disagree with. I don't like their culture. I don't like the way they behave. I only get one life. If I get rid of these people, I won't have these problems in my life because they'll be gone. And then my world will be utopia here without them. that's a pretty dangerous thing that atheists have a history of doing on the macro scale. So that's what we were saying here. If you assign a utopianism existence, I guess, for God to handle in the afterlife, I think that's better. This is why peasants can live without pleasures in this world and they can be happy because they're trusting in God to take care of them. And that's really how you show that you love God. If you feel this world could be all there is and say, I'm not going to take part in these evil acts that I've just described, that's ultimately a sign that you love God and you are demonstrating through that faith and through feeling sort of like a relationship with the spouse. I added this part, like a relationship with the spouse. I don't remember what I was thinking about when I added that there, but I thought that was a good statement that if you think that's all there is this world, and I'm not going to engage in something that's wrong. I'm not going to do harm to that person, which would improve my existence. I'm not going to do anything I'm not supposed to do. Even though I could partake in it, I might even get away with it. I might enjoy what happens if I did. This is what a lot of criminals do. I talk to people that have like prison records, and they'll say things like, when the Amazon package thieves became a thing, this one guy was saying, "Look, there's a package there. There might be something valuable in it." I'm like, "Yeah," or there might be a camera on one of these houses that'll record you doing it. Do you think if you get seen doing that you might go back to jail? Maybe. But if I don't get caught, I might get something valuable. You might get something that has no value. I mean, it doesn't register. Why would you do that? But to some people, I guess they feel like it's worth the risk. So I think this is saying here, this is how you demonstrate you love God. If I could get something out of that, but I'm going to do what's right instead. I'm going to miss out on that because I think it's the right thing to do. This is what God tells us to do. That's how you demonstrate you love God. And I think there's a point that's on my mind now that I think is going to be coming up. We'll see if it does. I have a short memory. Okay, Jews have unimpressive origins. This is what one of the things that we say goes to show that starting out as a small pagan people, turning into whatever success we have is not because of our inherent superiority. It's because of God. This is our claim that the Torah is divine. If it would have been written by us, we would not have depicted ourselves so negatively the way we are in the Torah. History is usually written by the victors, so the people writing the history books make themselves look very good. We do not look good in the Torah, and usually does not depict themselves negatively. So we have achieved whatever success we have because of God and Torah. Religious people want to take care of each other. Even non-religious people know that even non-religious people that were raised with the Torah. So this is like secular Jews. Even though they might not be observant, they might not know that we're supposed to muzzle an ox while it's working, or we're not supposed to muzzle an ox while it's working in the field so they can eat. They know we're supposed to help each other. They might not know every law because they're not observant. They don't study the Torah, but they know we're supposed to help each other. So they will give to a Jew where they might tell the rest of the world to go to hell. So this does keep a certain level of success in the community, which ultimately comes not from the people, but from the values that the Torah has instilled in the people, even if they failed to impart most of the lessons from the Torah, they did impart that. So non-religious people who have a Jewish family, they've grown up hearing these things. They didn't get all the lessons from Torah because they're not religious, but some of it does get through by osmosis, just by being around it. So I think we should absorb as much as possible so we can get all of the lessons from Torah, not just the ones that happen to creep in through osmosis. Okay, Now, what did I mean when I said that Jews have unimpressive origins? Abraham, even Abraham came from, see, it says doctors, but I said idolaters. And the talk to text didn't pick that up. And I missed it when I was trying to correct most of the things that it didn't pick up right. So Abraham came from idolaters. So this debunks the idea that the descendants of Jacob are going to be great because the DNA that they have in them. But all the descendants of Esau are going to be bad because of the DNA that comes from him. Abraham has the DNA of his parents who were idolatrous, which goes to show your merit will come from how you behave, not who your ancestors were. The Torah is as different from what preceded it as creation is as different to what preceded it. As big of a change as there were going from nothing to what creation is, there's as big of a change of going from a world without Torah to a world with Torah. Not just today, all the improvements that we've seen from implementing what Torah has to teach us, but just the concepts in Torah were very foreign to the world that had never heard a lot of them before. So, for example, the Torah is the first time that the world saw a God that is moral. It was the first time that the world saw a God that you could argue with. That was the phenomenon that did not happen with deities prior to Torah. Nobody debated Zeus and all these other pagan deities and said, "No, can we have a little flexibility on the Baal Peor?" That's not the way it worked. So this was a very foreign concept that people were not familiar with at the time. Another proof that the Torah was written by God and not by Jews is because every religion depicts their people positively. No Jew would portray our people as negatively as the Torah does. Think about a lot of the conversations that you're in with many of the Jews that you know today. You know, many Jews depict us above non-Jews. So if we were the ones writing the Torah, that language would have been there. Jethro was not an Israelite. Supposedly, Caleb from the story of the spies was not ethnically an Israelite. I didn't know that. This is what Dennis Prager is making the claim in the book, so I'll assume it's true. I'll have to go back and verify that. Respect it, but suspect it. But he claims that Caleb was not ethnically an Israelite. Shiphrah and Puah, the two midwives in the book of Exodus, the text seems to make clear they were not Israelites. This is one of the things the Abarbanel says. There is midrashim that says Shiphrah and Puah was really Miriam and I think the other woman. But they claim that Shiphrah and Puah was really Miriam and the other woman. I forget her name. But the Torah does not say that. That's a later midrash that says these people were really these people. And I don't find it convincing at all. There's a lot of evidence in the narrative that seems like these women were Egyptians. So they're elevated to a high status. That wouldn't have been the case if it was written by Jews. All these people that are elevated to high statuses would have been Jews. So the midrashim written by Jews that say they were Israelites, those two midwives, I don't think that's true. Look at how Jews talk about people today. Jews would be demonizing the non-Jews in these stories. They would be the reason for our suffering. They would be natural born anti-Semites as the descendants of whoever they came from. If they were the ones writing the Torah, all Jews would be heroes, and all of these characters that were elevated to a high status that were not Jewish would not be portrayed as positively as they were. You can look around today at the world and see that's probably the case. If you do not consider the Torah to be divine, then you are very likely to disregard commandments within the Torah For example, people that do not believe the Torah is divine have severed relationships with their parents because they feel like they do not have to honor their mother and father. But if you believe the Torah is divine, it's far more likely that you are going to swallow your pride when your parents upset you, and you are going to do what God has instructed you to do and not rebel against your parents. The belief that Torah is divine is what gave people what they needed. I think he used the word courage here, but it gave people what they needed to resist converting to other religions, even under the threat of death. Some people were actually killed because they would not violate Shabbat, because they believed that the Torah is divine. If you have problems with the narrative in the Torah, that's one thing, but the commandments are another thing. If you can't accept all of the commandments, at a minimum, you have to accept the 10 commandments. And this is my sentence here that I'm putting in. If you can't accept the 10 commandments, then I think you really need to rethink why you are here and why you feel the need to identify as Jewish. If you can't keep that minimum standard, I don't even think you should consider yourself as religious, because I don't see what's the difference between someone who says, I don't have to accept this, and someone who just says, I'll do whatever I want. I know what's good for me. I don't need anyone to tell me what I can and can't. That's my personal belief. If you do not think that the Torah is divine, then who are you morally accountable to? That's a good point. If you think you know what's good and what's bad, then how do you say I failed to meet a standard? There's by definition you meet the standard because you make the standard. I eat whatever I want. I do whatever I want on Shabbat. I treat people however I want. I don't need to give any consideration to their side of the story because I know what's good. I know what's right. I know how to be a good person. Then who do you ever answer to say, could you have done it this way? Did you take this into consideration? You're just the ultimate authority. So if you don't agree with the standard in Torah, who are you morally accountable to? And I thought that was a really great question. A good exercise, this is another good one. This is actually pretty profound. A good exercise is to ask your children, what do you think I want you to be the most? Happy, successful, smart, or good? Don't ask your children, what do you want to be the most? But what do you think I want you to be the most? What do you think your children would answer? What do you think your children would say? Dad, I think out of these four options, this is what you want me to be. I think you want me to be happy. I don't think that's the answer my son would give. I should go through this exercise, actually, and see what he does say. But, wanting your children to be happy is good. Wanting them to be successful is good. But as we discussed earlier, successful people can be very immoral. Successful people can have um, lots of things that they want, but not have a life with meaning. Having children that are smart, that's great, but a lot of white collar crimes are committed by smart people who thought they were going to get away with it that caused a lot of harm to a lot of people. But if he says, Dad, I think I want you to see me be good, then that means I did my job as a parent. And this is the most important lesson. I don't know if it's the most important lesson, but it's one that ranks very high in Torah, is that it's going to help us create good people. This is what God wants from us. So once you've asked your children, what do they think we want them to be? Then compare that to what do they want to be. So if my son says, Dad, I know you want me to be good. That's what you want the most. Okay, good. Now, what do you want to be the most? Because then I thought about this. If he says, I want to be successful, that's a good character trait to have drive to be success. But did I pass this lesson on to him? If he says, I want to be good, I can live a life of meaning if I'm poor. I don't have to be successful. I don't have to be happy. Bad things happen. I'll learn to deal with it. But I want to be a good person. That means I not only did my job as a parent, but that lesson was handed over to him. If that's what he says, that he wants to be a good person, then he'll transmit that into actual actions. And I think that's when you know you succeeded as a parent. That's not to say that I did. I haven't asked him yet. I don't know what his answer will be. I'm going to ask him later on when I talk to him. Okay, we are asked in the Talmud, this is what Dennis Prager says, it's in the Talmud, to give an account for every permissible thing that we did not partake in. I haven't read that in the Talmud, but I do recognize it from chapter 29 of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. It says misspelled from instead of from. Um, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says you're going to be asked when you die. You know, I don't get into what happens when we die, but the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says you're going to be asked to give an account for every permissible thing that you did not partake in. Why didn't you participate in this? I created this, it was allowed. Why didn't you enjoy it? Also, I recognize this from Hilchot Mamrim, which is in Mishnah Torah. So Mishnah Torah, Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, it's all coming from the Talmud. So I'm not questioning that it's there. I'm just saying Dennis Prager uses the Talmud as the source. I'm recognizing it from later sources that are deriving it from there, but I haven't read the actual sugya that he's referencing in the Talmud. Hilchot Mamrim is where we get the sentence, you cannot prohibit, you cannot permit what is prohibited, and you cannot prohibit what is permitted. So it's the same level of violation to prohibit something that is permitted as it is to permit something that is prohibited. So we all know you cannot permit people eating pork. Even if there's archaeological evidence that other nations ate non-kosher food, we can't permit it. It's not allowed. But we also cannot prohibit things that are permitted. If you're allowed to have these types of foods, we can't say it's prohibited because it's allowed. And according to somewhere in the Talmud, which is reiterated in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, you'll have to give an account. Why did you deny yourself this? Why did you have permission to enjoy life today and you chose not to when it was permitted? Why did you do that? So this here, I'm also adding, this is my own statement here. I don't know why the Kiruv movement does not use this. Because if you want people to be part of your religion, you have to make your religion look good. I don't understand why people want to equate being religious with denying themselves good things. Because who would want to be a part of a religion where nobody's allowed to do anything good and they have to deny themselves from enjoyable things? Does anybody ever say, man, Shabbat is terrible. I'm not allowed to do this. I'm dreading tomorrow because it's Shabbat. I can't do this. I can't do that. Who would look forward to Shabbat? Does the Kiruv movement do this? Their goal is to make people religious. Do they ever tell people, are you religious? You need to come suffer with me every week. And sometimes more than once a week, because we don't just have Shabbat. We have holidays that happen throughout the week. You know, so the Kiruv movement, they make religion look good, so people want to be a part of it. So, you know, this is, I think, why we should be making the religion look good. Why do people say to be religious, you have to deny yourself things? I mean, you have to deny yourself some things for sure, but it's good that we do that. If I didn't deny myself these prohibited things, it would be bad. We would be living bad lives. So the Kiruv movement should be making everybody look good as a way to entice them to become religious. So I think that's why that's there. Okay, so those are the things that I got out of this so far. I still have like an hour to go on the audio version, so I haven't even finished it. And I didn't touch anything about the actual rituals of the Seder. They're just like the ethical lessons that I got out of it. I wish it had organized this a little bit better. Maybe because I just got so much out of it. I don't like the way it made this such a bullet point presentation. I wish it was more separated and easier to read like this, but I don't like what it did with a lot of these. Maybe that's because I put 38 of them in at once, because when I did them one at a time, this came out pretty good. but I'm not going to sit here and do one at a time for all of these because it would take all day and I just don't have that kind of time. So anyway, those were the lessons that I found valuable in what I've gone through so far in this book. Anybody have anything they'd like to add?
I have something to add, Maria.
Yeah, go ahead.
You are very valuable. I learned so much from you, and I regret that I can't attend these lessons more often, because every time I hear you teach, it's like this is the rabbi I actually enjoy. So
Thank you.
just the
That means
compliment. This is true. Not just the compliment, but this is really true. So thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you. That means a lot to me. And I wish you were here. We have good conversations like before the recording. I really wish you'd have been here for like an hour before we started this. But I mean, that's okay. We talk outside. So I can tell you what you missed out on if you want in the other group. But by the way, I'm gonna try. Are you still on for June? I'm gonna try and be there.
I'm sorry.
Are you still on for June in New Jersey? I'm gonna try to be there.
Oh yeah, but you know what? We don't know when what mikvah is gonna be. We're gonna be doing it, because now that the rabbi says that it may be in Philadelphia,
Okay.
so it's like 3 hours from me to drive there. So I'm not sure, because we haven't found mikvah yet.
Well, let me know for sure when you get the date
Absolutely.
because let me stop the recording and then I'll say what I want to say. Stop share. Stop recording.